What's up guys, Fee here, and in today's video I am doing something special before 2021, and that is a timeline explained video. In God of High School, we don't know which time is what, and they don't even give us numbers, just give us something like, oh, before this time, a long time ago. So I am going to try to break down every time lapse before the God of High School tournament and after the God of High School tournament. I've seen a lot of channels do this on Attack on Titan, Naruto, or even Dragon Ball. And between you and me, I don't even know when a second season of God of High School is going to drop out. Probably 2 years or even 3 years from now. So I really don't know. I don't even work for them. So please, people in the comment section, stop saying when is the season 2 dropping out. I don't work for Crunchyroll. That's the last thing I want to have in my damn life, making bad webtoon adaptations. So like I said before, they don't specify any time lapse in God of High School, so I'll try to be as simple as I can by saying before God of High School and after God of High School. If you want more God of High School content, make sure to subscribe to this channel and make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to leave me a like for more videos like this. And if you have time, follow me on Twitter. And now let's get into the video.
You don't got bread, don't hit me. Pull up with the gang, ain't with me. Got that bitch like whoa. Dress this sauce, I know.
So, the real story of God of High School starts millions of years before the original God of High School tournament. It was more of a dark and greedy time where monsters wanted to control every realm possible. Of course, they couldn't have the power. They were strong enough to take over the human realm, but they were not strong enough to take over the god realm. Of course, the humans, as weak as they are, they called out to the gods and they helped them by giving them power, borrowed power. And these are not your regular humans. Those are cavemen, like literally cavemen that are kind of smart for some reason. And the first ever human to ever get borrowed power was none other than Kim Hong-kyo, the woman who's from the 6. And those powers was giving her everything: speed, power, strength, agility, and intelligence. But there was a little side effect that only affected her and no other people, I guess. And this side effect was that every time she was using her power too much, she would turn out into a fetus or a kid, depending on how much she used her powers. But she considered it, and because of those powers specifically, the humans won the war against the monsters. And after this big ass war, she got some kind of respect between her and the gods and earned the title of Madonna. It's an Italian term which means milady, a title of respect of high rank that only she had. And of course, she fell in love with one of the gods. And this god was Hwangryong. We don't know much about him. He was of course one of the right hands of Buddha, but we didn't know how strong he was or anything. The only thing we knew is that he was in love with Kim and they were going to have a baby. But he considered the baby because if she uses her power while she had the baby, well, the baby could have died. And he had the bright idea to destroy the crystals that was giving powers to humans. But of course, he got caught by the Jade Emperor and punished in front of his lover. This story kind of reminds me of Adam and Eve. If you don't remember, Eve ate the apple and God punished both of them by banishing them out of heaven. But in this story, the god is being executed. Same goes for Kim. But the gods decides to take her body to India, a godly place that was back in the heavenly realm, but now it's underneath the human realm. And inside that magical place, they decide to bury the body of Kim and create some kind of taboo, an agreement between humans and gods, which in the end humans are powerless. They will have no power whatsoever, but that wasn't it. If they wanted to have some kind of power offered by the gods, they needed to offer themselves, of course, human sacrifice. And that's why Nox is here. So this was the first chapter, the first story that originally gods were interacting with any kinds of humans or monsters. And they saw what happened between those two lovebirds, I guess, and they kind of feared them because what could humans do with even more power than those two? A power that could be even more bigger than Buddha himself, that could put them in some kind of danger if that type of thing happens again. So that's why they created a a big taboo across the whole world, making humankind powerless against them. But now, if we move a couple of millions of years from now, we have a monster, a special monster that was created out of a rock, who was born as a god that has godlike powers, and that is the Monkey King, the only monster that the god still fears today. But listen up, we don't know anything about him in the past, how he was born or how he was treated. God of High School just doesn't provide those informations, and the only thing you could do about it is that you can take the original story of the Monkey King and try to mix it up with the Monkey King we got from God of High School. That's the thing I've been doing since the dawn of this YouTube channel. But I no, just don't do that. It's gonna mix up in your head, and you're probably gonna mix characters and stuff together. That's what happened when Okay, but listen, now we are entering the arc of the Holy War between gods and monsters. We don't see any type of human trying to interfere between them because, they are weak. And without any humans with any borrowed power whatsoever, they can't do anything about it. So forget about the humans, there's a big fight between monsters and gods. And the only one who was ahead of everything was, of course, the gods and the Monkey King. The only one who was ahead in advance of all of the monsters. He was ready to fight. He was ready to get a whole war just to get the same privilege than the gods. And after eating a lot of heavenly peaches, the fruit that Jin ate at the start of God of High School and almost died because of it, and obtained his armor with his staff, he was ready to go after every gods he could fight. Of course, at the start, the main gods like Zeus or Beelzebub or even the Jade Emperor didn't really care, but until they heard that this monster killed almost millions and millions of gods, the main ones was kind of worried, so they also prepared for the main event, the Holy War. So they decided to create a team of 3 gods named the Prince of Natak, and their main purpose was to protect the heavenly realm from monsters trying to attack them. And of course, any monsters that tried to approach heaven was defeated and killed by those 3 gods, of course, because they were just too strong. But everything changed when the war happened. Now you got the Monkey King with the 9 great kings, composed of 8 other monsters that are king of their own biome, I guess. You have King Uma, basically the arm in arm of the Monkey King. Then you also have Garuda, another monster that was pretty strong back in the monster realm. The 7 others, we still don't know who they are, but I guess during the story of God of High School, they are going to mention them or something like that. But the war started really well for the monsters. They were getting almost every angels that the gods sent over the battlefield, but that wasn't it. They also decided to send out the Prince of Natak in the battlefield, which gives us a big downgrade for the monster army. They almost kill half of those monsters blocking the way, and they captures 3 of the great kings, which includes King Uma, the Monkey King, and Garuda. But it didn't end there. Their weak prison didn't hold off the Monkey King, of course, so he just destroys the place, go up in the sky to finally see the main gods, Buddha, Zeus, Beelzebub, and others. And the Monkey King, as big and confident as he is, he decides to take the big wolf that is Buddha and loses the fight. And at the same time that this was all happening up in the skies, the Jade Emperor came down in the battlefield and slashed all of those 14 billion monsters by only using 1 swing. And this sword was Buddha's, of course, and it was created by one of the best blacksmiths the universe will ever know. And this character was Hephaestus, and the only way to obtain this sword was to kill 40,000 humans in the human realm. Something that easy and really quick to do. Something that Buddha wouldn't even care. So without not even a minute, he brings out 40,000 corpses in front of Hephaestus, which later on gets him the sword, but that's the only thing he wanted, so he decides to kill Hephaestus, which later on the day the Monkey King sees on the ground, and when this happens, the Monkey King obtained his armor. But I should have mentioned this earlier because this was before the war even happened. So, like I said, the Jade Emperor slashes every monster in the battlefield. And up there in the skies, the Monkey King was defeated by Buddha. So this was a total loss for the monsters. And what did Buddha do with the Monkey King? He sealed him under a rock for 500 years in the monster realm. In the original stories of the Monkey King, he was sealed under a big mountain named Wuxincha. Shima, the Mount of Five Fingers, where he was basically crushed by a big mountain. And of course, the Monkey King was super strong, so he endured it for 500 years also. But one day, he was saved by a young monk, a beautiful young monk by the name of Xuanzang, who would release the Monkey King if he agreed to help her on a big journey that we know as the Journey of the West. And with nothing to do, he decides to join Xuanzang with two other monks who helps him throughout this journey. But there was something that weren't normal. These monks were inside the monster realm, where humans were not allowed to be here. So how did they just randomly spawn in? And this answer was because of Buddha. Those monks were sent by Buddha so the Monkey King could be the next supreme god. And during this big journey, a lot of happened. A big strength coming from the Monkey King, of course, and a love relationship between Xuanzang and the Monkey King occurred during this big journey. And when they finally arrived at their destination, India, there was only one task left, and that was to sacrifice Xuanzang. And by doing that, the Monkey King could have the power that Buddha has right now. But she really didn't want that, because if she died, she knew that the Monkey King would have been really sad. And by hearing this, Buddha tells them that they failed the test, which later on Buddha reveals his true form, a giant man bigger than any universe combined together. And by doing so, he kills two of the monks, except Xuanzang, who the Monkey King is holding right now. And he really wanted to kill Buddha, but he was just too weak. So Xuanzang begs him to eat her, which he do in the process. And with the power of Xuanzang he has inside of him, he kills Buddha in an instant, leaving him floating in space alone and weak. So the Jade Emperor, who was there seeing all of this happening in front of his eyes, he decides to have a deal with the monkey. We don't know what kind of deal it was, but we know for a fact that he kind of downgraded the monkey. Because, listen, the Monkey King basically regenerated himself as a baby inside of a big green cocoon, and he was sent off to the human realm. Which this ends up one of the big events in the God of High School. But 20 years later, a soldier by the name of Jin Tae-jin founds the cocoon in North Korea and decides to take care of it for a good amount of time. But 3 years later, a group named the Six decides to interrogate Jin Tae-jin about the cocoon, but he really doesn't want that. He just wants to fight. So he fights off 5 of the members of the Six, and the last one was defeated by the cocoon, who exploded during the fight. Which the real story starts with the birth of the new Monkey King, Jin Mori. And the baby trains up with Jin Tae-jin, who becomes his grandfather. But in North Korea, another baby appears who was born at the same time or the same day than the Monkey King. And this was Sujin Lee, a kid who was born in North Korea who didn't have the same privileges than Jin Mori. Of course, her mother was a worker in the North Korean mines, and they didn't have anything. By anything, I mean any clothes or any food. The only food they had to eat was given by the soldiers in North Korea, and they were using the same clothes every day. And unfortunately, one day, Sujin Lee went to meet his mom in the mines, something that she knew she wasn't supposed to do, but she wanted to surprise her mom. But of course, the mine gets destroyed. But later on the day, a young soldier by the name of Shin Bongsa finds Sujin Lee under all of those rocks, and realizing who it was, he was playing a big role in her life, which was an undercover Northern worker. She didn't knew anything about him being a soldier, and she was unconscious, so it would be a perfect time to just leave her off the camp. But of course, the general of the task force, Shin Bongsa, decided to tell him that we need to kill her and erase any evidence of the incident. But of course, Shin didn't want that, so he sends off Sujin Lee away from this area and decides to fight his general, Ryu Sensei, who was also part of the same task force than Jin Tae-jin. But of course, Shim decides to fight him and loses the fight and giving away his sight, making him blind for the rest of his life. And for Sujin Lee's part, she woke up at a small army hospital where she was explained that the accident that happened was a South Korea attack coming from the task force of South Korea, the Re-Taekwondo Force. the same fighting style that took out her father, and now the same fighting style that took out her mother. And with hatred, she trained for almost 10 years. And after this long training, she went after the unit who killed her whole family, and she finished the mission by killing all of them. This was the original story of Sun Jin Lee, but if you go 10 years back to Jin Mori, we see that his grandfather left him alone in his house. And before leaving, he said to his grandson that he'll need to find friends to help him throughout his own journey of becoming a great martial artist. And it does happen 12 years later, where he is 17 years old, ready to face the God of High School tournament. On his way to the tournament, he meets up with two characters that we all know as Mirio and Handewi. And as he actually goes in the tournament and fight, there's a lot of characters that Morihjin actually meets up, but it would be a long ass video if I talk about each and every characters. So I'm going to talk about the characters that are really important to the story of God of High School. And I'm going to start with the owner of the God of High School, Mujin Park, and his commissioners. So 17 years ago, yes, we are going back, a young man by the name of Mubong Park was part of the Six, and when they fought Jin Tae-jin, well, they all went in some kind of big depression and started training in their own way. And for Mubong Park's way, he started thinking. All of his childhood, he was named some kind of genius, intelligent, a master of fighting style. But when he just realized that his whole team was defeated by one single man, he didn't know what to do. But one night, everything changed when he meets up with a young man by the name of Menduk Song, a character suffering with Lou Gehrig's disease, a virus that attacks mostly his legs, but nevertheless, he was a big fan of Mubong's work. Same goes for his sister, kind of. His sister didn't really like Mubong at first, but when they started having a relationship, when Mubong started seeing Mandok more, they started being some kind of circle group, a friendship, a big one. So big that Mubong is dating Mandok's sister, but it just can't be too happy. Mendok was dying because of his disease, and Mansuk, his sister, was part of Nox. And they thought that if they sacrificed her, a god would have been born out of heaven. But she wasn't the one who awoken the god. Mendok was the one who awoken him, because he was the chosen one. But of course, as we all know, gods in this series are our enemy. So the god, once he was awakened, he destroys everything around them. And he even started a fight with Mubong, who couldn't hurt him because the taboo was still here. It was still alive. And when he realized he couldn't kill him, it was over. The demon already took the life of Mansuk, injured Mandok, and he was the only one who could do something. Until the Jade Emperor appears and kills the demon that we know as Beelzebub. And this event will create even more casualties, because now that the demon is gone, and the sister of Mendok is also gone, Mendok is going to rejoin Nox and create his own community. Human sacrifice for having power that gods has. And for Mubong's side, he decides to destroy everything that occurs with Nox Corporation. Every building, every community also. But for some reason, he doesn't find Mendok's community. But in his side, he decides to make a tournament. And by making this tournament, he meets up with a lot of people. By a lot of people, I mean the commissioners. And on his way of destroying buildings, he meets up with two kids. One that becomes Commissioner P, a beautiful woman who we still don't know how she meets up with Mubong Park. It was either that she was in one of those buildings, probably working for Nox, but she didn't know what the hell she was doing. She was still a kid. But later on in the story, she becomes Commissioner P. The next character was Commissioner R, a young boy who was treated differently because he was immortal. Yes, Commissioner R was part of one of the experiment of the Jade Emperor 100 years ago, but now that he was getting beat up by people, Mubong saved him and took him under his wing. And by the time passes, Mubong decided to tried to become the world president, but decided to make the God of High School tournament. And for Mendok's side, he began to learn more about Nox and became one of the students of the Jade Emperor. By having Beelzebub as his borrowed power, he learned alchemy alchemy, science, and the whole purpose of joining the Nox Corporation was to revive his sister. So this was the story of Mubong and Mendel alongside it. So let's move on 17 years later, where the God of High School tournament takes place. In this tournament, Jinmori did a lot of matches. Some of them were kinda easy, and others were tough, of course. He lost one of the biggest match against Park Ilpyo, but Miroyo took his back and won the fight for him. And while they were fighting, Moojin Park realized that Ilpyo had something so godly encaged inside of him, and it was the key. An object that inside of it is a god soul, something that could put seals upon other humans who has borrowed power, just like normal humans. And the god that was inside Ilpyo was the Nine-Tails Guardian, just like the Nine-Tails Fox in Naruto. But this one was more like a legend and not a alien. It was more human to confirm that this was something true. But Mujin wasn't the only one who wanted the key. Mendok also wanted it for the Nox Corporation, and also one fighter named Jiggle Take who wanted the key. And with his borrowed power, greed, he was able to capture it and absorb it, making him one of the fake gods of the story. And of course, he was defeated by Jinmori, who was able to get half of his memory from the past of being the Monkey King. After defeating him, Moojin Park promised to the winners of the God of High School that they would be gaining a wish from someone. And this was from Kim from the start of the story, who had the power to give wishes to people, but only one, because the side effect of her powers, of course. And Jin decided to do the only thing that was right for the story, and it was to heal everybody that was around him. People who lost their arms or legs, or people who was just tired enough. So everybody around him got their arms back, or legs back, or anything like that. And he just went asleep for a whole week. And after this event, everybody went so well, until Mujin realized that Mendok also tried to be president of the world. So he tells Commissioner R to be undercover for this mission, and also tells him that he'll need to go in the Nox Corporation to try and be their friends or work with them. Of course, this mission would have break hearts or break relationship between commissioners. So 3 months later, we see Mendok giving a handshake to someone really important inside of a press conference. And this someone thinks that Mendok saved the world from Jiggle Take. We all know it's Jinmori, but it's, they think it's him. And who do we see behind him assisting him? Commissioner R, who successfully did his mission. So this would be the original end of season 2 of God of High School, the webtoon. But now we are moving into a different arc, 6 months later, where Nox got control of everything and everyone on Seoul. And the mission for everybody who wasn't taking over control or being controlled by Nox, like Moojin Park, Jinmori, and every of his friends, was to find Jinmori's rest of memory of his past of being the Monkey King, and to find his grandfather, Jin Tae-jin, who was captured by Nox 9 months ago. So for the first part, everything goes really well. Jinmori goes into his original birth of place, the Monster Realm or Demon Realm, where he meets up with his monkey army, who is kind of civilized and are being controlled by a fake Monkey King that Jinmori defeats and takes his memory back. Days later, Jinmori and his friends meets up with the Prince of Notak all over again to have another big war against the gods. And the war ends with Jinmori killing the Prince of Notak, but the fight doesn't end there, because Sujin Lee is also seeking revenge on the fighter who killed her father. But there's another problem. The Sage Realm is about to be destroyed because one of the Prince of Notak almost blew it off. So Jinmori and his friends has a time limit before dying in the Sage Realm, so they'll need to be quick and fast to go back to the human realm. And how are they going to do that? Jinmori is going to sacrifice himself by sending a clone instead of himself to save his friends, including Sujin Lee. But the humans get a surprise when they come back to the human realm, and that is the Jade Emperor, who cuts down Dewi's right eye. Seeing this going all down, Mubong says, well, we're going, I'm done. And the Jade Emperor just let them go. So a week later, Sujin Lee learns more about the death of his father and the fighter that we know as Jin Tae-jin. The monsters that was in the Sage realm are now in the human realm, and now they are trying to adapt to the new human stuff. But they are not the only one who's trying to adapt to this new human stuff. The clone of Jinmori, who claims himself Mori Yui, is also trying to have new friends like Daewoo and Mirio to convince that he is somewhat still Jinmori, but also a new character to the story. And this would be normally the end of the arc of the Sage Realm. But weeks later, we are starting a new arc, that is a new tournament arc, of course, of the God of High School, hosted by the one and only Mandoke. So Mori Yui with Daewoo Han, who still got one eye, and Mirio are going to attend the tournament, where we meet a lot of new characters. And this tournament is a world competition where every parts of countries will be participating in this tournament, like China, Russia, and Italy for some reason. And this tournament consisted of a battle royale, and the 3 last teams to be alive or who were not knocked off by the other teams would win this part of the tournament. And there's a lot of stuff that happened in the tournament that I can't cover in this video because it would be too long. Just to say that there's a lot of clones in this series, and the Jade Emperor is making some of them. So the people who came out victorious was of course the Korean team, Mori Yui's team, the Japanese team, and the Italian team. And this would be the end of this tournament arc. But there's another tournament arc that's about to happen in 2 weeks. And this tournament, the tournament that I just talked about, lasted only 1 day. So during those 2 weeks, we learned even more about Nux and their true plan was to again capture Ilpio Park for the key. And we learned that Jinmori isn't dead yet. He is trying to train to go to the 7 gates of heaven and go back to his friends. While this was happening, Yui with Daewoo and Mira was having their own training arc with the one and only Seo Hal-young. But after this weird training arc, they forgot they were high schoolers and they go back to high school to finish their semester. And 3 days later, they are ready to participate in the tournament. But there was a plan first. They weren't really going to participate in the tournament, but they were going after the Cane Sage of the Jade Emperor. That was the whole purpose of them participating in this tournament. Of course, they meet a lot of people during this tournament, even Hercules. But after this little tournament match that they screw up because of Mori Yui using the expansion of Yui, he goes after the Jade Emperor for the can of sage that will help Jinmori coming back to the human realm. But everything doesn't go as smooth as planned. Of course, the Jade Emperor switches body with one of his clones, like I said earlier, and fights Mori Yui. And with this strong body, it's kind of hard to beat the Jade Emperor until a little hole that Kim made from her powers that could kill her opened up so Jinmori could give the real Yui to Yui. But sadly, Yui loses the fight and the Jade Emperor has a can of sage. But later on, he gets betrayed by Commissioner R himself, who was working for Mujin, but decides to betray also Mujin by opening the doors of heaven, thus giving us 7 new enemies to defeat, which are Zeus, Shiva, Saint, Uriel, Angelo, Beelzebub, and the Unknown. With an army of angels, they are here to destroy the human realm to create a new heaven realm. And a big war collapsed between the humans and the gods that we all know as Ragnarok, the start of a new arc. The war starts pretty bad for the humans, but the Jade Emperor comes with a clutch by giving the Sage Eye to Han Daewoo, giving us the new Jade Emperor. A lot of stuff happens during this war. Jin Tae-jin comes back to help the humans by fighting Beelzebub with the help of his dear friend from the Six. But he wasn't the only one who came back. By opening one of the doors from heaven, Jinmori comes back angry as ever. And after making a funeral for Mori Yui, who was killed by one of the gods, he fights every one of them, killing them. But only 2 was left alive. Beelzebub, who was fighting Jin Tae-jin, and Satan, who was so happy to have a worthy opponent to fight. After a big fight that happens in space between Jinmori and Satan, who loses the fight, Commissioner R wanted some of that smoke, but he decides to destroy the taboo that was forced upon humans, which means that humans can now use borrowed powers. But he did this for a reason, and that was to activate any gods that was around him to be his borrowed powers so he could defeat Jinmori. But before Mori kills Commissioner R, R, Commissioner Q saved the day by putting his body in front of Commissioner R, not killing him. Thank God Jinmori stopped at the last moment. But Commissioner R gets killed by Mendok, who runs away. And now that some people are happy that the war is finished, and some people that are sad because other people died, like Commissioner R or Mirio, who lost her memory, we still got Jinmori and his grandfather, who wanted him to meet him after so long, after 12 years. But it all had to end when Mubong came behind Jin Tae-jin and pierced him with his hand, killing him. Angry, Jinmori creates a big beam that erased the whole area, just to send himself flying off this area to a house that kills 2 parents and 1 little baby that was still alive after the crash of Jinmori, but the baby's leg was broken. After feeling guilty, Jinmori shrinks himself into a baby again to be his little brother. This was the end of the Ragnarok arc, and now 17 years later, a new arc starts with a new character, and his name was Mori Dan, that we follow and know that is Mori Jin later. And 6 months later, Mubong Park is destroying the world by creating some kind of new biome for everybody to live in. And during those 6 months, there are like 2 tournament arcs with 1 training arc and another war arc that was kinda short. Long story short, during those 17 years, Mubong Park decided to become the world president just to betray humans to become a god. He hated those gods and now he is one. And Mori Jin is trying to fight him, but he has the same strength and power than Buddha. So this was the current arc of God of High School, which means this was the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. I can't feel my fingers from all this editing. This was my biggest video ever in this channel, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitter for more God of High School content, and I see you guys in the next video.